So we've had a number of reports in the IRIS series so far, starting with the IRIS 2020, going on to IRIS Extreme and other reports, and now we have the IRIS Tsunami. The Tsunami is an extension of research that we first began underneath the generous auspices of our partner RiskRecon. We're looking at the ripple effect. And ripples are events that everyone's very familiar with, events that take place within a single organization. You have a breach, you detect the breach, you clean up the breach, you incur some costs, et cetera there. Always very interesting and very important. But if one thing that COVID-19 may have taught us, among other things, is the importance of supply chains, of interconnections between firms, business-to-business relationships. In the Ripples report, both the Ripples Across the Risk Service in 2019 and the recently released 2021 update to the Ripples Across the Risk Service report, we explore the ripple effect, whereas a single event takes place at an organization, and then through a business-to-business connection, that propagates out to 3, 4, 5, 500 different firms that get swept up on it by that. In the Ripples reports that we've done, most of the Ripples were 3, 4, or 5 organizations, though there were a significant minority of events that took place in the dozens and even hundreds of events. And just as we did in the IRIS Extreme series, we wanted to look at those extreme ripple events, what we call tsunami. Longtime followers of the IRIS series or the Ripples Across the Risk Service that we've done underneath the RiskRecon banner there may be familiar that we leverage quite heavily the Advisen cyber loss feed. It is a commercial feed of tens of thousands of events going across decades of information. Generally in the IRIS series, we tend to focus on a 10-year time period there, but we start with the Advisen set and then add to it beyond that. And that was actually something that we did quite a lot of for the Tsunami event is, we start with the Advisen set to identify where those events were, and then did additional data collection using open source and additional research there to find out there. And that was quite an involved process and something we do now as an ongoing basis for IRIS, and is actually part of our Risk Retina series as well.
Yeah, we continually underestimate the time that it takes to collect all of that data. But it's valuable and has a lot of good, insightful, actionable information in there, as I think you'll see when you look through this report.
And how did we actually define big? In Extreme, we were looking at the largest number of records, largest number of dollars involved there. Did we use the same criteria in Tsunami? I think we had some slightly different criteria as well.
We did. We used those same two. So we took the, I believe, 30 largest loss events in terms of overall dollars, and also overall records lost. But the added dimension that is unique to this is that we also looked at the largest loss events in terms of the number of secondary organizations impacted by that event. So from those 3 criteria, we down selected to the largest 50, kind of a combined total across those.
I'm curious, one of the things that I was really struck by when we first did the original IRIS and IRIS Extreme studies was looking at the actors behind some of these events. As a former security practitioner myself in the enterprise space there, I had long had the opinion that trying to defend against, nation state actors there was, for most organizations I was a part of, not within our scope. We just didn't have the resourcing to, defend against, a really well-funded, sufficiently sophisticated adversary. But I'd also had the thought that as a common organization, perhaps we were not going to be really targeted by that. And I was really shocked when I looked at the Extreme information and said, well, maybe that's not the case. Was that pattern repeated here in Tsunami?
Yeah, and I think that one thing that I would like for people to take away from this IRIS Tsunami and also the Ripples Across the Risk Surface reports that you mentioned earlier is that when you do a risk assessment and ask the question, am I likely to be targeted by state actors or whatever? You've got to widen that up beyond your immediate sphere. I hate to say it, but it may not be about you. You can be impacted by state actors that don't directly attack you because they've gone after one of your up or downstream supply chain partners, and you are impacted by that event. And a lot of organizations, I think, don't think about risk assessments beyond their own walls, and I think you have to in this interconnected world. And in fact, we've seen some research that you can be impacted more by a breach that doesn't directly hit you than by one that does directly hit you, which is very counterintuitive, but supported by the data.